Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are, and thank you for joining today's webinar, The New Power BI, What's Different and How Your Team Can Gain the Most Benefit. I'm Megan Turco, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we jump in, I'm going to briefly go over how to use the webinar console. The orange arrow on the right side of your screen will let you toggle the control tray open or closed, and at the bottom of that control tray, you'll see a chat window. Please feel free to submit your questions at any time throughout the webinar via the chat function. Additionally, on your GoToWebinar console, you should see an area for audio settings. If you're calling in through your telephone, please choose the Use Telephone option. And alternatively, if you're using your computer speakers, please select Use Mic and Speakers. And lastly, I do want to note that today's webinar is being recorded. We'll send out the slides as well as a link to the on-demand recording of the webinar within about 48 hours. So definitely keep an eye out for that email if you're interested in viewing the webinar after today or sharing it with any colleagues who weren't able to make it with us during the live webinar. And with that, I would like to introduce today's webinar presenters. Our first featured presenter is Jeffrey Weong, who is the director in charge of Armanino's top-notch business intelligence technical team. He has broad experience in aspects of enterprise application development, system integrations, and business intelligence within ERP and CRM systems. We also have Noah Kalugi with us here today. Noah is a senior manager on Armanino's business intelligence practice. He has extensive experience with data warehousing and a great understanding of the importance of integration among systems. It's great to have you both with us here today. And with that, I'm going to pass the presentation over to Jeffrey to get us started.
Thank you, Megan. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So what we're going to do today, we're going to share with you a little bit about the introduction of Power BI and how you can get the benefit out of it as soon as possible. So to appreciate what Power BI is, we're going to go through a little bit of walk down memory lane, trying to understand where is it coming from, how it came about, and we're also going to touch upon a little bit of a pricing and different version of what's available. But majority of the presentation today, we're going to focus on the demo itself. And Noah later will help us present building Power BI from scratch and what's available out there that you can use today. And to end the webinar later today, we're going to try to stack up how Microsoft performed against the other competitors in the space. So first of all, I'm going to try to go through this fairly briefly and quickly, but I just like to touch upon some of the key points here. So the word power was introduced by Microsoft in 2010. It was mostly used as a data modeling technical tools, hinges around SQL Server, and the functionality in Excel was pretty much just a pivot table-like. So it wasn't much introduced, if you will, to the user community. And in 2013, they start coming out with more user-facing features. And those are the Power Query, where you can actually fetch data from different places easily. There is also Power View, where you can actually visualize objects, charts, and things like that. A little bit more appealing than the typical Excel objects and visualization, and Power Map, where you can map your data in a geospatial objects, if you will. But pretty much during this time, this type of feature, the Power Suite, if you will, it's still sitting on users' hand. What that means is they just use it like they would use Excel, but they're only going to be able to use it on their own. And the only way to share it is to kind of share the file. In 2013, later that year, Microsoft introduced SharePoint integrations. So this is the first time that Microsoft introduced the word Power BI. What they do is they allow users not only being able to create those Power Suite, but they are able to share amongst each other as well, and in a governed fashion. And then later in World Partner Conference, they announced the introduction of Power BI for Office 365. So prior to this, Power BI, if you will, was just sitting primarily on premise. So that means, it's just sitting within house, within an organization itself. Power BI for Office 365 opened up this box, if you will, by going to Azure. So this allows user to have the options whether they want to go on premise or on the cloud, if you will. But unfortunately, still, all of this functionality is highly dependent on investing in Microsoft technology. What that means is you need to have a SQL Server, you probably need to have a SharePoint, as well as Excel or Office 365. So in early last year, they actually started introducing Power BI Preview, and that is probably the one that you're going to see the rest of the day. Power BI Preview came out and was built independently of Microsoft's other components. So that means any other users or organization who doesn't even have Office or SharePoint or SQL Server can actually use Power BI Preview. And soon enough, it was promoted to become a PowerBI.com that we have today. And then late 2015, Microsoft deprecated the support for Power BI Office 365. So now, fast forward to what we have today, just quickly compare and contrasting what we have here. So depending on when somebody asks us, do you do Power BI, it could mean different things. So today, we only have one Power BI, which is PowerBI.com. Excel on-premise features and functionality is not called Power BI anymore. It's just called a Power Suite or Power Pivot, Power View, Power Query, and Power Map. And that still exists today, and you can deploy that internally, but you do require SharePoint and SQL Server. So it is technically free if you have them, but PowerBI.com is what's out there today, and that's what we're going to be focusing on throughout this presentation. As mentioned, there are two different types of Power BI, but users today can sign in, and everything that we demo today is available as a free users. So the other users are Power BI Pro, which is $9.99 per user per month. There are some features and functionality that's a little bit different and focus more towards enterprise governance, if you will, but you can actually get the same insights and the same capability as you would as a user in the free version as opposed to the Pro. I want to touch upon a little bit about the authoring options. So PowerBI.com is completely web-based. So that means when you deploy your solutions, people will be viewing it from the web, whether it's going to be using Microsoft Internet Explorer, whether it's going to be using Chrome or Microsoft Edge or any other web browser. It's HTML5 compliant. So again, that is one of big change that they made with PowerBI.com. So it's easier not only to develop, but it's also very easy to deploy. So PowerBI.com itself has a number of functionality for you to be able to build that from scratch without any installation whatsoever. But should you need to work offline, work locally, if you will, without connected to the internet, you can actually download Power BI desktop as well. And then later, once you're done with the solution, you can publish that on the PowerBI.com. And a little bit about this Power BI components before we jump into the demo itself. PowerBI.com has data sets. Data sets essentially contain data that you get from your different sources, whether that could be Excel, that could be some on-premise systems like tables, SQL Server, Oracle, different SAP environment, as well as cloud-based data. So you put all this data together into a data set. Once you have the data set or your data model, then it will be used in a report where you can actually build objects visualizations, such as bar graph, line graph, pie chart. So you can actually build rich environment, which we're going to demo today. And then once you have that report built, Microsoft PowerBI.com introduced the concept of dashboard, where you can actually selectively pick different objects and visualization from the report onto your own dashboard. So this allows you to work with multiple different reports. So imagine you might have a opportunity report or forecast report, and you might also have a sales report that's built on two separate data sets, built by potentially two different teams. But then you as a user, you can pick and choose what components out of each report that you want to include in your dashboard. So this gives you a bit more flexibility, and it's a tailored environment, if you will. So with that, I'm not going to take too much of our time here. I'm going to pass it to Noah for him to do the demonstration of PowerBI.com.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Jeffrey. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I believe it looks like my screen is showing up. So what we'll take a look at is, first, this is PowerBI.com, and we'll go through several different examples today. The idea is that we'll go through kind of a journey today. So we'll start with what I'll refer to as personal BI. So this is what an individual may want to do with the data that they have, and then ultimately we'll move into an enterprise type of BI type of environment as well, but all using Power BI and PowerBI.com. With that, let's just go ahead and get started. We'll use probably the favorite source for people who are on the call today, which is going to be Excel. And just to show you what the file looks like, this is sales line detail. So we have order information, category details, product details, quantity and sales information within the Excel file. And what we'll do is we'll take this file and we'll load it directly up to PowerBI.com. Just one little pointer before we move on is that when you are in Excel, if you're going directly into PowerBI.com, it requires it to be a table. And to make it a table is extremely simple. All you do is a keyboard shortcut of Control and T, and it'll highlight it, click Create Table. You know it's a table because it gives it a name, and then it also automatically added the filters here. So then I just save it, and now I'll have my Excel file that is set up as a table that can be used within PowerBI.com. So let's go ahead and flip back over to PowerBI.com. And I'm going to click the Get Data button. Depending upon how you get into this, you might see the full yellow Get Data button, or what you might see is a little arrow here, but they'll both get you to the same spot. So I'll go ahead and click that, and you'll see different options. The first option is My Organization Content Pack, and this is an organization in a kind of a broader rollout can generate and distribute content packs to users within the company. And a content pack is a good way to have standardized data, standardized reports that are used across the organization by different people. Services, I'll come back to in just a minute, but these are outside of your organization content packs, and again, I'll come back to that. And then you can also connect to Azure SQL databases and other database connections, but in this case, what I want to do is I want to connect to a file. So I'm going to click the Get under File, and now I can see that I can choose a local file. I can choose something that would be on OneDrive or in a SharePoint environment. So I'm going to use a local file. And as I'd mentioned, I'm going to use one that's in a table format. So I'm going to choose the order detail table, then click Open, and it's importing it now. And what you'll notice is that it added a new data set down here called order detail table, and it also added, so there's an order detail table. So what I'll do is I'll show how we can take advantage of PowerBI.com, or take advantage of the Excel file within PowerBI.com. So what I can do is I can create an initial dashboard. So maybe I want to bring on the sales figure and the category name. So now these are the different categories that were in that Excel file that we're looking at with the sales information. I have all these different visualizations to choose from. So in this case, I'm using a column chart. I could use scattered chart if it made sense, or in this case, I'll use a bar chart. So now, or a pie chart rather. So now it's set up as a pie chart. I can add other views as well. So maybe I want to add another dashboard or another chart for sales, and then for the particular products. Okay. So now I've got that information, and to show, I guess, a little bit of a different way to do it, I'll add it as a chart here. So one thing that you'll notice, for those of you who worked with the Power BI preview before, there's a lot of new capabilities that are out there, and that's one of the things we want to talk about today, are the new capabilities that are available within PowerBI.com that may not have existed last time a lot of people went and kind of started checking it out. So one thing that I can do is that within this chart, I'm going to choose men's footwear. And as you'll notice, when I choose men's footwear, it's going to it's going to identify the two bars that have men's footwear, and then the other ones are kind of grayed out, if you will. And you can change how that interacts. And this is an example of an enhancement. And by the way, while I'm thinking about it, if you do use PowerBI.com and there are things that you want the product to do, as Jeffrey talked about, it's rapidly enhanced, and you can vote for what you want, and then Microsoft includes that in their roadmap for future changes of PowerBI.com. So I'm going to change how this interacts. I'm going to make this a filter on the report. Now, as I choose a different value, rather than having those gray lines that are, or those lighter bars that are being essentially grayed out because there's no data, it now just filters it down to only the ones that have data for what I've selected. So in this case, I think this is a better way to look at it. Other enhancements come down to the kind of the end polish that's needed. So here I've got a title that says sales by product name, and it says product name because that's the name that was in the Excel spreadsheet. But here you notice that there's no space in between product and name, and I can change that. So one, I could simply add a space to it, but really in this case it doesn't, having name on there doesn't necessarily add any value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and change this by just simply getting rid of name, and now it just says sales by product. Or I can also change the colors on these. So rather than a default color, I can use the Power BI yellow. I'm sure there's another word for it, but I'll call it that. And now I've got a dashboard, or I've got a couple of charts that are set up and they interact with each other pretty quickly just within PowerBI.com. So I can save this now, and you give it a name. Okay, so there's my name. And what you'll see is that I've now got a report called Webinar Example. And in here, what I can do is I could take one of these and I can pin it to a dashboard. So I could do a existing dashboard, or I can do one from scratch. Okay. Again, I'm pretty clever, so I'll call it Webinar Example again. And now when I go back to it, I can see this is the pie chart that started off in my report that that will really be part of a dashboard that can include different measures. So the thing to mention, if you haven't seen this before, is that there is the natural query language capability within a dashboard. And you'll notice that that was on the dashboard, but it wasn't on the report. So if I want to do an example with that, what I could do is I could do a search for men's footwear. So maybe what I want to do is look at the men's footwear group, and now it's doing a listing of all items that were men's footwear. But maybe I want to do a higher level view on that. So let's apply a little bit more of a criteria in our natural language search. So I'm going to do it by product. Okay. So now I've got just the product information, but of course I probably want to have something that I'm summing up. So in that case, I'm going to add quantity to it, but I wanted to sort it by quantity. So I'm going to just go ahead and type that in. So now I've got a sorted group only for men's footwear, and now I can see the products that are out there. I can pin this as well to my dashboard, and I'm going to pin it to an existing dashboard since I've just created it, and click pin. And now I can see that I've got my sales that came from my report, as well as my tile that came from the dashboard tab itself, or the dashboard itself when I did the natural query language. So those are a couple of quick examples of how you can create a dashboard just within PowerBI.com itself. Now, if I want to do a little bit more advanced capabilities, it makes sense to go into Power BI Desktop, do the work there, and then publish it out to PowerBI.com. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use that same example set that we had before. Okay. For some reason, there it goes. This window, for whatever reason, wanted to stay hidden. So now I'm going to bring in my order detail, and also it doesn't have to be in that table format like before. So I'm going to just choose the order detail, click Open, and now I can see the different tabs or worksheets that are in that file. In this case, there's only one, and then I'm going to choose the one that I want. At this point, I could apply a filter by doing Edit, and I could filter out columns that I don't want. But given the size of this data set, I'm going to go ahead and just include everything and click Load. And it's going to now load that Excel spreadsheet into Power BI Desktop. And I can go ahead and go out here and add a different data set as well. I'm going to add the order header, and this will allow for me to do summary information based on the header detail or the header information for the orders. So I'll choose the order header, and same story, I could filter out particular columns if I wanted to, but I'll just bring everything through. Okay, so now you can see over here, I've got the different fields that are on the different files. So just like in PowerBI.com, I can see the order detail with the different fields. And now because I've added a different data set, I can see the order header and all of its fields. If I want to see the data that's in that file, I can go to the Data tab and then see the data that's in there. And I could go over to the other one as well, see the data that's in it. And the last thing to take a look at from a setup standpoint is here, this is the Relationship tab. In this case, because order ID is a shared column in between order detail and order header, it automatically created my my relationship. But I could also go over here, and if I needed to, I could create a relationship in between different columns. In this case, it's telling me that that is a nonsensical relationship, so it's not even letting me do it, which is nice that Power BI will protect me from myself every once in a while. But I can see that. Another addition to a recent addition to Power BI is that you can now do not just one-to-one relationships, but you can do one-to-many. So essentially like a left outer join, right outer join, and a full union, which is helpful when you're building out dashboards. Okay, and another more advanced feature within the desktop compared to PowerBI.com is the ability to create new measures and columns. And just to go through an example of that, I'm going to go to the Order Detail tab here, and I'm going to create a new column. So I've got my column, and I'm going to give it a name, and I'll just go with Unit, not Unite. And I want this to be a calculation based on my sales divided by my quantity. So I'm going to choose my sales, and I'm going to choose quantity. And you'll notice up here it automatically puts it in the proper format of the source name and then the field name. And I'm going to click the Enter button here to accept it. And now you can see that my data now has a new column called Unit Price on it. So if I go back to my dashboard, the visualizations are similar to what you saw before, but now you can see though that I have the ability to combine information files. So I'm going to choose my order date from my order header, and then I'm going to bring on the sales information. So now I can see that info. I can also bring in maybe say the sales office with my sales detail. So now I can see that, and I can do that as a donut chart if I wanted, or I guess a pie chart. I'll go that way with it. And you can also do like a copy and paste kind of function like you would expect. So I did a Control-C and then Control-V to do a copy and paste. Now I can use this starting point, and that starting point could have filters and things like that in it behind the scenes, but I'm going to change the dimension. So rather than sales office, I'm going to put the employee name on, and now as I click these, you can see how they'll interact with the different objects that are on this particular report. Another thing you can do within all the different environments is use a table, which can be handy because oftentimes an executive may want to see high-level information like this, but then really when it comes down to understanding the details of what's happening, you need to be able to see the transactions. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add on the order ID with the employee information, the customer, and let's also add on the quantity, sales, unit price info. So now I've got a transaction listing, and just like with the other ones, when I choose the different filters, it's going to update this as well. And of course, one that I forgot that I wanted was product name. Whoops. Let me have the right area selected there. So I'm going to add the product name, and then it added it to the end because that's just the default behavior, but maybe I want to have all my dimensions grouped together and then have all my facts or all my measures afterwards. So now I've got my product name on here. I can do a sort on it. I can sort by different values. And what's interesting is once you start looking at that, what you can see are a little bit more information and data. So for instance, here, if I look at it from a unit price standpoint, I can see that Leaf managed to sell 30 units at $63, while Tom managed to sell 25 units of the XS at $58. So you're able to start kind of take a look at the detail that ultimately is flowing into your higher level information. Now, another thing to show is that there are a lot of enhancements, not only within PowerBI.com itself by Microsoft, but within the marketplace or the community around PowerBI.com. So there's a visuals gallery, and you can get here just through this link here, so app.powerbi.com visuals, and you can see a variety of different things that are out there. Some of these are produced by Microsoft, but they're not official visualizations yet, like this one, for instance, the Sandance. And there, again, you can see a lot of different ones out here. Some of these are done by partners or just simply individuals. One that I like for doing a filter based on dates is this one called a timeline. And within Power BI Desktop, I've already downloaded it. And so if you notice here, I've got the ... or ellipsis, and I can click on that, and I can bring in a custom visual. So it's warning me that I need to be careful with whose visuals I'm using. But in this case, I know it's a trusted source, so I'm going to go ahead and bring in my timeline. Click Open. Okay, and what you'll see now is that I've got a new visual called a timeline. So I can add that to my dashboard or to my report that I'm creating, and then I want to use the order date on it, and I can configure it to interact with this. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up. So now it's just on the years, but I can choose a different year, and what you'll notice is that everything on here will interact. So what's kind of a cool way to use this is that maybe I want to have, rather than having years on this one, maybe I want to go down to a lower level and look at it, say, by months. But when I choose a different months or the different year, it's going to now return just the months that are the data for the year, and then you have it graphed out with in chronological order. Another thing, I guess, is I'm comparing and contrasting to what you may have seen in the Power BI preview. Before it would put these in alphabetical order, it's now recognizing hierarchy structure, and it's using the chronological order, which is what you would really want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'll just call it order example and overwrite what I've had before. Okay, so now I've got an example of a dashboard that was constructed within Power BI Desktop, and let's go back to PowerBI.com. Now, one thing we noticed when we were looking at the attendees or the registrants for today was that there are an awful lot of people who are with CRM, and so we wanted to go in and kind of add some content that's specific to the registrants. So here's an example of using the CRM dashboards. And this is actually a content pack, and I'll show how you're able to get to this. But what's happening here is that CRM Online was connected up to PowerBI.com through a content pack. And when I did that, it produced not only this data set, it also created the report as well as a dashboard. And this dashboard is comprised of different elements that are on the report. So it's all very sales oriented, so you can see revenue information, win rate, average deal size, things like that. And then if I go down to the Reports tab, I can see more specifics around the sales function within the CRM system. So I can see top accounts by revenue, things like that. But it's extremely simple to set up these content packs if you're on CRM Online. How you do it is you go to Get Data, and then before, when I clicked Files and then Get Data over here, I'm going to actually click under Services and I'm going to do Get. And you can see that these are different content packs that are available in the market today. So there's GitHub, for instance, or Click Dimensions are ones that are, I think, fairly common to be used, or Google Analytics. If you're on Dynamics AX, and in particular, actually, it's AX version 7, you can see the AX financial performance. So there's a content pack that connects into AX version 7. The one that I used for CRM was this one right here. So you put in the detail on where your CRM is, and then it'll automatically build out that dashboard. It takes a couple of minutes depending upon your data size, so that's why I went ahead and pre-populated it here today. But one that I think is kind of fun is the one called Bing. So it gets information for keywords. So I'm going to use that just as an example. So I clicked on Bing and then Connect. Okay, and now I'm going to put in a keyword that I want to use. So Microsoft was kind enough to give me some very clever examples of things to look for, but I'm gonna choose something else. I like cars, and so Corvette, pretty cool car. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do a search for Corvette, and what you'll see is that it created a dashboard, and now you can see, wow, this has changed since last time I looked at it. When I looked at it just a little while ago, the biggest one was actually this one on 420, but you can see that there's a big spike just now, and the week-over-week volume is 15% higher. So there must be something that's happening within the Corvette community today. But you can see information around in this view. You can see the use of different visualizations. So these are KPIs, and then here you can see the percentage of English versus different languages. Again, as a visualization, you can see a map with where the people are coming from, and then you can see current articles that are out there related to the Corvette. So what I can do to kind of show you how this can start to come together within a dashboard, I'm going to take this top one and click on the ellipsis here, and I'm going to pin it to my sales manager dashboard that is based on CRM data. So I'm going to pin it to an existing one called Sales Manager Dynamics CRM, click pin, and when I go back to that dashboard, what you'll see is that that I now have a dashboard, and actually I'd added it before, and you can see it's been updated. So it refreshed when I went back to this dashboard. So let me just go ahead and get rid of that so we don't have a duplicate. But I can move it around too, so maybe I want to put it up here now. So now I can see the activity from Bing for Corvettes with my CRM sales information. And if I go back to my Power BI desktop, so now let me publish this to Power BI. And what I'm doing right now is it's taking the Power BI file, it's called a PBIX file from my computer, loaded it up to PowerBI.com. Okay, and I can see it's now, there's an example out there called Webinar Example with the dashboard, and then I can go to the reports, for instance, and I can see the reports that we're working on within Power BI desktop, and I can take one of these and pin it to the dashboard called CRM. Okay, so now I've pinned that on there, and you can see the Bing example, and you can see the example from the sales details. So to go through a practical example, maybe you have GP or AX or another ERP system. This is information coming from your CRM system. And then down here we have the Bing example. And then this could have been AX or GP data all brought together on a single dashboard. So that's where this can start to get pretty clever with the dashboards of bringing data from different spots together. So those were examples using content packs that are readily available, using Excel as a data source. But I wanted to go through an example real quickly with using on-premise data, because people who are on the call may very well have an existing cubes today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new Power BI desktop sheet, and let's open it up here. Bear with me. Okay, so now I've got that open, and I'm going to click on the Get Data button, and you can see the different sources that are available. I'm going to go to Analysis Services. So what I'm going to do is connect Power BI Desktop to an on-premise cube. So I selected Analysis Services, and now I need to put in the name of the server. And it's always helpful to type it correctly, so I'll try to do that. Okay, and I'm going to do, this is another new feature, so I keep calling out the new things that are added, but before, up until January this year, your only option when connecting to a cube was to do import data, and it was hugely inefficient and not very practical when it comes to what I'll describe as an enterprise rollout. But now that you can do a live connection, I'm going to go ahead and click OK here. What it's going to do is it's going to connect to the server, and it's going to show me the different databases that are out there. And to go through an example using GP, so I'm going to connect to the GP database, and in particular the GP Sales Cube. And what I have is a live connection, and I know that because it says direct connection down here in the right. And because it's a live connection, it allows for me to do a few things. One is that it allows for me to have a governed environment where the data business rules are applied within the cube, and anyone who's using that cube will have the same information. So in that context, I can create different measures or also different dimensions that I want the business to use. The other thing that's important about that is that because it's using your on-premise cube, it allows for you to pass the user's Active Directory or AD ID back to the cube to apply security. So a common example is that you might have a salesperson who can only see their data or for their territory, but not for another territory. You can apply that because you have the permissions model available to you within the on-premise cube. So to give you a quick example of this, I'm going to add on the extended price, which is going to be the amount that the customer paid for the for the item, and then let's see. Let's choose a dimension. So we'll look at in the item dimension, I'll add the items by class, which will allow for us to be able to see the groupings of item sales with that info. And okay, and let's add a chart. So I can add a chart to my, or a map rather. So I added the map, and I can choose a different, within the customer, I can choose the state, and then let's also add the extended price again. Okay, so if I want to see the detail, I can see now that I've got sales for different territories or different states. I've got Minnesota, for instance, and then I can see what's been sold to Minnesota. If I want to see the item level details, I can click on that. And just like what we saw before with Power BI Desktop, you notice how it's only showing the part of the bar where there's data, and I can change how that interacts just like before. So I'll click on the Edit Interaction button, and I'll change it so it filters it down. So now it's only for the sales in Minnesota or the sales in British Columbia, things of that nature. And so this report can then be, I can build out a dashboard and then publish it to PowerBI.com. And through PowerBI.com, it goes back to that on-premise environment to get to the data. So it's again, that's where you can start to do an enterprise type of environment with the rollout. So wanted to make sure to leave plenty of time for questions, and also for Jeffrey here to wrap things up. So I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and kind of call that the end of the demo and pass it back to you, Jeffrey.
Okay, thank you, Noah. So we've seen what Power BI is capable of doing. Obviously, we're just scratching the surface here, and there's more things to come. But I would like to kind of share with you how Microsoft Power BI stacked up against the rest of the competitors. So what you have on the screen here is two results from independent survey. One of them is from Gartner, which is pretty recent, February 2016, and the other one is from Forrester last year. So as you can see, Microsoft is ranked very highly because of their introductions of the PowerBI.com. I think not only that it gives the power back to the user, it gives also the power back to the technical folks, if you will, to structure and govern the data. And some of those capability we haven't touched upon here, but we will be able to go over some of those on the next webinar. Okay, just quickly recapping some of the things that we saw today before we go into the question and answer. So you can definitely go to PowerBI.com today. So it's free. You can do the things that Noah shared earlier on the demo. Everything that you've seen can be done through PowerBI.com. And to kind of remind you again, the data could be coming from different places. It could be coming from Excel, any table files, any on-premise data sources, such as the tables, SQL tables, Oracle, what have you, including the cubes that Noah shared earlier today as well. And we also have cloud-based systems that you can connect to as well. Those are the things such as Salesforce.com, Microsoft Dynamics CRM, and so on and so forth. But keep in mind there are a number of content packs. Again, those are pre-built dashboard and report with some of the most commonly used SaaS platform. So if there is one, you should probably try to get connected with that one really quickly, because all you need is your username and password, and it will come back with your own data with a pre-built report with some pre-configured dashboard. So again, that becomes pretty powerful to get you started, and automatic data refresh is also built in on that. So it's a very good way to start, if you will, if you do have one of those platforms. The one thing that Noah mentioned as well, Power BI has been considered pretty recent. It just came about, mid of last year. But when it first came out, since it's a brand new platform and all sort of functionality, if you will, it was pretty early stage and it was pretty premature, if you will. But with the rate of change that we've been seeing from Microsoft Power BI, we kind of feel like it becomes a very good options and alternative to the other tools out there, because not only it's becoming very easy and quick to build something, it's feature rich, but also you don't have to have any investment upfront, if you will, when it comes to server and things like that. All you need to do is just go online, start building the things that you need to use in your daily basis for data analysis, getting insights out of your Excel spreadsheet or text files or what have you. And then later down the line, you can kind of work with the rest of your organization, trying to promote it to something that you can share with others throughout the organization, if you will. So again, that's one thing that I want to point across, that even though what Noah mentioned today is a lot of the new features, Microsoft really comes out every 2 to 4 weeks with new features or bug fixing. And the new features they're coming up with is actually based on the vote and the features that users put on to their website. So again, it's very exciting. The things that I thought wasn't possible suddenly become possible the next month or two. So it was pretty amazing from that perspective. So with that, I think I'm gonna jump into the question and answer, see if we have some here.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And Noah, we did get a lot of great questions actually during your demo. I think that several of them actually, Noah, you already answered, but we'll go through them really quickly here. And then if anyone does have additional questions that you haven't put in, now would be a great time to put those in. So our first question, Noah, when you were doing the demo, you pulled data originally from an Excel file. Where does that data live once you're using it within Power BI?
Yeah, it'll ultimately get pushed over into PowerBI.com or the desktop itself. So that's a good question, especially like if you're working with a larger data set, there is a limitation on how much disk space storage you get with PowerBI.com. And if you're working with large data sets, you may hit that. And one thing that I didn't mention, but is possible, is that you can set up refreshes where it'll go out and pull in new information from an Excel file or from an OData source to make sure that the data is staying current.
And quickly, I'd like to add to that just a tip. If you do have a OneDrive account, and if you put your files over there, it's automatically going to get refreshed by Microsoft Power BI. So that is a quick tip, if you will, so that way you don't have to set up anything.
Great. And also, I obviously know you used SQL Server and also Excel. What other types of data sets can you bring in aside from the Excel spreadsheets and things like that? This person was asking actually about a possibility of connecting to an open API.
With the API, I'm not aware of the ability to be able to bring that in. You can do OData. So, for instance, that may be supported. So you can definitely bring in data from like an OData source, which would be another web source. And in fact, that's the example that was used with the CRM data was doing that. So, Jeffrey, do you know anything in addition to that?
Yeah. So if it's connecting directly to an actual API call, I think that might be we have to take a look at the API exact connectivity. But I think not only it can connect to OData, I believe it can work with JSON as well. So a lot of the environment out there can actually be providing JSON. So depending on your systems, we might be able to do that. But again, something to get started, because I think the most important thing is trying to get you insights. If you do have access to data today, you can just dump it out for now, and then at least you can get insights right away.
We did get a couple questions that had to do with Power BI being built as a cube, or if you already needed a cube. So there were some questions about whether you need to know where the data is coming from, specifically, I think, in relation to Dynamics AX. For example, one person suggested she wants to cross her sales data with production data. No, I think that you showed a few examples of that, but can you kind of expand on that for the Dynamics AX users in our audience?
Yeah. So you can build out like a dashboard that's going to have data from different sources. So to go through like a cube example, for instance, you could connect to two different cubes. So you might have a cube that has sales data. You might have a cube that has production data within it. And so then those would be separate reports within PowerBI.com. But then a dashboard can be used to bring together tiles into one single view. So just like I had the CRM data with the Corvette detail and then also the order detail, you could do that based on a cube that had sales data and a cube that had production data.
Great, thanks, Noah. And also, if a content pack doesn't exist pre-built for a platform that someone has, how difficult would it be? Is it possible to still make that connection, maybe with some back-end development?
That's the good question. That's where the OData connections or ODBC connections would come into play. So you can connect to sources. It doesn't require there to be a readily available content pack to get to that information, at least not in all cases. And the other thing to mention is that a company can produce its own content packs. So if you have Power BI Pro, you can have content packs unique to your organization, and people can open those up and take advantage of those content packs within their area of Power BI. One question that does come up is, are these dashboards unique to me? And they are loaded into your environment within your PowerBI.com environment. And actually, while I'm talking about that, within the context of content packs, you can take an existing content pack and make changes to it that are specific to you.
Great. Thank you, Noah. Also, how does Power BI integrate with a data warehouse, for instance, Precision Point?
Yeah, in a case like that, so then the cubes would be available for access through PowerBI.com. And then you can also actually hit tables directly. I didn't really go into that today, but you can hit SQL Server tables directly with within a data warehouse environment. So if you have a data warehouse, you can connect directly to that and then bring it into Power BI desktop. One thing to kind of be aware of in that case, back to the comment on the data being brought into Power BI, if you're doing large queries against large tables, your Power BI data file will end up being rather large, and that can impact your ability to load that up to PowerBI.com. So that's one of the benefits of using a cube as a source.
Awesome. We did get also several questions actually that had to do with sharing reports or dashboards, and if it's possible to just have a link to share a dashboard so that users can all access the same one. And also, do you need a Microsoft login to access it, or is there a way for folks who have the access to share it with others in their organization who maybe don't have that login?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a nuance to this. One, the best way to share this information is through a content pack. So if you have a data set and a report and a dashboard you want others to use, then a content pack is the best vehicle to do that sharing. Now, you can share a dashboard itself, and on my, I'm not sure if you want to make me presenter again, but on my within a dashboard, what you can do is you can share it, and you can put in the email address of somebody within the company that you want to share it with, and then they can access that dashboard. And sharing in that way is at the dashboard level, but it is not available within the report. So again, if you want to share a report, that's where a content pack comes into play. There's another question on signing up for it. So you can sign up for PowerBI.com, and it is independent of your Active Directory or any other Microsoft licensing.
Awesome. Thanks, Noah. We do have a few other questions, but I think that they're a little bit specific, so I'll let Noah and Jeffrey answer a few of those last questions that we didn't get to today offline. So if you did ask a question that has kind of a specific answer or something that might be a little bit more specific to your company, we will definitely follow up with you guys on that so that it can be something that helps your team instead of a more general answer here. But thank you all to our audience for the great questions that came in today, and I actually think that we might get out of here a little bit early. So I do want to thank Noah and Jeffrey for being great presenters today. That does wrap up our Q&A session. If you have any questions, feel free to contact Noah or Jeffrey directly. Their contact information is up on the screen, but as I mentioned earlier, we will definitely be sending out both the recording to the on-demand webinar and also a link to the slides. So you'll get their contact information in your email within a few days here. So definitely keep an eye out for that. No need to hurry up and write it down right away. And I'm sure that several of you actually already have Noah and Jeffrey's contact info. And as you exit today, there is a quick survey, so definitely take a moment to let us know your thoughts on today's webinar. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day.